I enjoy being right just as much as the next guy. My family would probably even say more so than the next guy. But I'm not sure there's ever been a video where I've hoped that I'm completely wrong as this one. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Del Rey. Yeah, like I alluded to in the intro, I don't want to be right about this video. Earlier in the week, I covered Packers that I think are due to go to the next level, due to break out, or their stock is rising. Today, it's the unfortunate flip, and it's Packers that maybe are trending downward or their stock is going down. And frankly, it's not even necessarily for all of them entirely their fault. It could just be that the Packers added more competition to the roster at the position that they play, or they're getting older. Well, and you're going to see all of the Packers that I chose today, just three of them, a little bit quicker on a Friday afternoon here. All three of them happen to play on the defensive side of the ball, and I did that for a reason. Because frankly, I don't think we know what the offense is going to look like this year, being Jordan Love-led and perhaps even a little bit more Matt LaFleur-led than what we've seen in the recent past. And I think the argument can be made. I mean, there's a couple candidates on offense that maybe their stock is going to go down. Maybe you could just say Aaron Jones is getting older, right? Maybe he can't do it again. I don't agree with that, though, looking over his career numbers. Or maybe Christian Watson. Well, Christian Watson is, his numbers overall, just his raw total numbers are bound to go up, right? Assuming he stays healthy. But maybe he just won't rise to the level of superstardom that some Packers fans are assuming he's going to. Even then, it's kind of tough to say, his stock's going down. No, it's not. It's still up. It's just a matter of debate as to how far up that stock is trending. Or maybe David Bakhtiari, just because he's getting older, that knee, he says now, is fully healthy, but is it going to stay that way? So maybe offense has got a couple questions, but that's what they are. They're questions. There's not a lot of educated guessing to say on the offensive side of the ball that this player is all going to trend downward. Now, on the defense, you've got a returning defensive coordinator. Much of the unit is the same, very different circumstances than the offense. And I think you can identify a couple players that maybe just may not achieve the success that they had last year. So without anything else, let's go right in to number one. That would be number 91, Preston Smith. Yeah, Preston Smith is going to be turning 31 throughout the course of the year this year. And we know, right? Never bet against Preston Smith in an odd-numbered year. For whatever reason, his career has this ridiculous trajectory of odd-numbered seasons are always his best. And the one anomaly to that, you could argue, is probably last year in 2022. Throughout the course of the year, he had a career-high 59 tackles. He had 8.5 sacks. Five and a half of those sacks even came after the Rashawn Gary injury in Week 9, when Preston Smith kind of got elevated to pass rusher number one, while Rashawn Gary was out with his ACL injury. But the argument here is to why Rashawn Gary may not reach the same heights this year is because even in that second half of the year, when he had 5.5 sacks, when he was pass rusher one, his counterpart on the opposite side of the field, Kingsley Enagbare, even out-pressured him in the latter half of the season. And there's just additional competition in that room now. We know that they retained Justin Hollins on another one-year contract. We know that they spent their first-round draft pick on Lucas Van Ness. And eventually, when Gary's back, they're going to want to see all three on the field at the same time, certainly. But they're going to want to get Kingsley Enagbare on the field sometimes. They're going to want to, play the whole collective of edge that they have at times. And plus, just pair that with the fact that Preston Smith, while he probably is your best run defender as an outside edge, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Preston Smith was never picked or signed or whatever to be a bona fide all-world pass rusher number one. It's just never really been his role. Think about his time in Green Bay, right? He had Zadarius Smith, who was putting up more stats than he was. Then the advent of Rashawn Gary became the bona fide number one, the hyper-athletic type. While Preston is your number two, who's able to set a really good edge on the side while adding in some pass rush. So I guess what I'm saying here is even in an odd-numbered season, I'm not sure that I expect Preston Smith to replicate what were some career best numbers last year in the form of 59 tackles. And even though that 8.5 sacks wasn't a career high, I'm just not sure he hits it again this year, despite him never having not done so before in an odd season. I guess of all the players here, Preston Smith is just the one that I feel the most questionable about. And I'm a huge Preston Smith fan, and I think he does great things. There's no doubt he's a heavy contributor on the defense, but I mean, if I had to find someone who may be trending downward and aging and not playing up to what they've played the last couple of years, I think Preston Smith is a reasonable choice. Number 2. And this one breaks my heart. Like I said earlier, I hope I'm wrong about every single thing I'm saying in this video. But number 2 happens to be Rudy Ford. Yeah, signed from Jacksonville last year. His story's quite interesting. I mean, they signed him from Jacksonville last year to be more of a special teams flyer than anything else. And then a couple injury happens, and all of a sudden, Rudy Ford is one of your starting safeties. In fact, he's your starting free safety for a good portion of the year. And then Darnell Savage forgets how angles work, and he gets relegated to the bench, starts playing a little bit more corner. Rudy Ford just keeps on playing well with 1 pass breakup, 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. This is a great year for Rudy Ford. He ended the season as the Packers' 3rd highest graded defender, according to PFF. So where did this come from for this 29-year-old or going to be 29-year-old safety, previously playing in Jacksonville as a special teams ace? And I think that that's kind of one of the questions. He was retained this year on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. He was retained earlier in the offseason, so I think you could make the argument that the Packers did actively try to retain him. They didn't let him get very far in the open market. But nonetheless, they still have been adding body after body at that position, and it still was only a 1-year deal for Ford, right? But they've added Tavarius Moore. They even added Jonathan Owens, who plays the free safety position that Rudy Ford does. So, to the question of how did Rudy Ford suddenly find success in 2022 when previously he really hadn't, we can dive into a couple grades, a couple snap numbers, just take a peek. So in 2021, his overall PFF grade was 57.7, and coverage it was 59.4, and that was playing a total of 423 snaps, 273 of which came in the slot. Yes, Jacksonville used him predominantly as a slot defender. Then all of a sudden he comes to Green Bay, starts playing more of a free safety type role, and he does a grade of 74.6, a coverage grade of 77.8, 443 snaps, 308 of which come at the free safety position. So you can say he got an uptick in playing time, played a new position, maybe a new scheme. All of these things worked in his favor to do things that we had never seen Rudy Ford do before in his career. But there's also some areas of concern here. Along with that increased playing time, he also missed more tackles than he generally had in his career. Playing down in Jacksonville, his missed tackle rate was 5.9%. Last year for Green Bay, in spite of being the 3rd highest graded defender, it came in at 13.3%. Just getting up there for a starting defender. And he did have a career high of 3 interceptions. Previous to that, he had 1 in his career. Last year alone, he tripled his career number for interceptions. He also had his very first pass breakup of his career last year. So while he has played some corner, he's played some slot, Green Bay said, hey, come on, try some free safety. We got injuries. Give it a whirl. I think there's questions to be had of, was Rudy Ford the opportunistic spark plug that the Packers needed? And he certainly provided in the course of last year. But is what he was doing sustainable that he can again win a starting safety job in Green Bay? Because he's got competition now. Darnell Savage, we know, is looking to be started at what is typically the strong safety position, a little bit more robber role, a little bit more closer to the line. And then at free safety, you've got Ford, Moore, Owens, Anthony Johnson Jr. Packers are going to throw bodies at it. Ford is by no means, despite that strong year last year, by no means guaranteed a starting job. And that, again, is a little indicative of what I'm saying here. Are the Packers questioning whether his success was legitimate and sustainable, or rather a product of circumstance? Because after all, if you think you've got a bona fide starter, why are you signing a bunch of competition for him? Again, these are the questions that were just worth asking today. I'm going to say it again, for the haters, for the people who want to jump in the comments and be like, It's Lombardi Time Brews. He's a jerk. He's rooting for... No, I hope I'm wrong. Just trying to be reasonable here. And then number 3, last one for today, a player that I mentioned earlier, except in a different light when I was talking about Preston Smith. Number 3, Kingsley Enagbare. And I guess this isn't so much about, when, Gary's out, because then Enagbare still may find a good amount of playing time. But more so, once Gary's back, you had a promising young player who, for all intents and purposes, was going to be edge number 3, who now maybe is edge 4 or 5, toppling down the depth chart in spite of great productivity and potential as a rookie. And look, I really like Kingsley Enagbare. I just think that the circumstances here have kind of dealt him a raw deal, if you will. Basically, last year, as a 5th-round pick, he kind of slid into the 5th round. A lot of people thought that he would go earlier. He showed some hyper-athletic traits and was a great pass rusher. And he was used rotationally as a pass rusher in the early part of the year to spell Gary occasionally, spell Preston Smith, even though that's a little bit less. He kind of, from what I believe, he did more on Gary's side. But he was kind of used in this nice rotation, right, to spell guys. And then all of a sudden, Gary goes down in week 9. Kingsley Enagbare's got to play. Play. His playing time more than tripled after week 9 to the close of the season. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, he did out-pressure his counterpart Preston Smith. On the season, he had 25 pressures to go along with 3 sacks. That's a highly respectable rookie year. But there were some causes for concern, too. Actually, most of those sacks came before Gary went down. I think it was only 1 actually happened after Gary's injury. And the Packers still chose, just like with Rudy Ford, you've got this young promising player, and yet they add players to the rotation as they go out and choose Lucas Van Ness in the 1st round. A player who is going to compete and take snaps from the rest of the edge players. So again, if you're totally comfortable, if you're looking at Kingsley Enagbare, you're saying, all right, we got Preston Smith, probably with his contract for 2 more years. We've got Rashawn, who's got to come back from his ACL. And then we have this beautiful 5th round pick who we have all the faith in the world in as our edge, top 3 rotation. We can re-sign Hollins as 4. Yeah. So do the Packers have all that faith in the last year's 5th round pick if they're still going to go spend that 1st rounder? You get what I'm saying? Why are they spending premium draft capital if they absolutely unequivocally believe that this kid can be a starter for the rest of his career? So I'm skeptical here that he's going to see the playing time, even if Gary, let's say he's put on the PUP, even if he's put on the IR to start the season. I'm skeptical that he's going to continue to see the playing time that he did last year. And in less playing time, is he going to match some of the productivity that he had last year? It's possible because maybe he's just best suited as a rotational pass rusher like he was before Gary went down. But the more you develop, the more you're supposed to see the field, right? Maybe it's just his niche is an occasional pass rusher. But still, to me, that's stock down from a player that you would hope would be on the upward trajectory to take more playing time on as he progresses throughout the scope of his career. So, like I said, quick episode today. Happy Friday. The offense is just so many question marks. It's hard to say anyone's going down on the offense. The defense, steady as she goes, hopefully improving as a unit. And it's entirely possible that all 3 of these guys could go down in their productivity this year, while the overall unit on the whole gets substantially better. That is entirely possible. Because here's the other thing. It's difficult to find players who are underachieving when darn near or overachieving, I should say. Find players who are overachieving when darn near the entire roster underachieves for a season, which the Packers did last year. So, just bearing that in mind, these are the 3 that I would feel pretty confident in saying they're great players. I'm just not sure that they're going to match what they did last year. And perhaps their stock is trending down. Hope you're having a beautiful Friday. Hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. I will be back on Monday. We're going to talk over some strengths, weaknesses, of course, barring any breaking news or, huge things that happen over the weekend. But I'll be back on Monday, and I will see you then. Have a wonderful weekend, and as always, go Pack Go.